Cheers. Okay, well,
And we're
here. Happy 4th, Jordan.
Happy
4th,
belated
everyone.
4th, everyone. Hopefully your holiday was good. I feel like we needed it really badly this summer. It just felt a really long phase
haul.
of no holiday and no just fun time like that. So it was, I think, is that the longest time where we go without a holiday, or is it
No, because we have no,
so either way, it felt long.
Yeah.
Since the last holiday. Yeah. You were in San Diego, right?
I was. The water was contaminated. Great. So, I mean, other than that, it was beautiful.
The fault of who? Tijuana or Mexico?
It was Mexico, but I feel like Newsom probably had his hand in it as well, somehow.
I feel like anything
because
related in California.
LA's water is contaminated right now, too. So you're really only safe in that sweet spot of Laguna Beach area.
Yes.
But I feel bad. I just feel bad. Like, I feel like if all the things we could focus on, if we could just have clean water, that would be my like top priority.
Same.
But it definitely felt like a very patriotic. I just felt like in general, not just in person, but also what I was seeing online, I would say it just seemed like everyone was very Americana. And I don't know if that's because like cowboys are really in right now, like all things Western are really in. I feel like California has kind of like the West Coast has embraced Texas a little bit. It feels like, I feel like there's kind of a merging of that, which has probably always been there, but it feels even prevalent now.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know what the catalyst was, or it's just a combination of things, but I've noticed the same thing. And in media, I think there's been a resurgence of certain aesthetics that are more Americana and 80s news oriented that are in shows and in movies that are coming out, and just like content in general. Photography that's on Instagram and Pinterest, Twitter, it's just been more of that and noticeable. And it's not that I've been off of any of these sites for the past couple of years. I've just really noticed it this summer.
Yes. And I also feel music is kind of leaning in that direction too. Like you see Post Malone doing collabs with so many country artists.
Hasn't every major artist album been country themed to some level? Like Beyonce's Cowboy Carter.
Okay.
There've been a lot of non-country artists leaning into that country aesthetic.
Yes.
Just because it's in.
That is true.
Yeah.
It is interesting because I feel for so long rap had like a huge monopoly, and like we kind of grew up with rap. Like that was kind of our genre, I would say. Like that was mainstream and popular music culture too, just generally speaking. And then it was like a little bit of EDM, and then I feel like the last few years music has been just not great. I would say from 2020 to 2023, I feel like there was a very dead thing with music. Like I saw the people that were kind of coming up, it felt very manipulate. Like I don't like Olivia, what's her name?
Rodrigo.
For example, like what? Like I just like it was a lot of TikTok music.
I know.
I don't know.
It's artists and production companies making music for TikTok, not for good music.
Correct.
There's been some overlap. I do think there's been some music that
was good on TikTok.
That TikTok made popular, even though it was good music to begin with.
I agree. Yes.
I think a lot of artists have been doing that because they know that if they hit the right noise and the right audience, that TikTok will blow it up. And it's a freight train.
Or just people who just became popular out of nowhere. Who was the girl that was next to Taylor Swift at the Super Bowl? That I'm like, who are you?
Oh, Ice. Who are you?
I don't know her, obviously, but she came out of nowhere. Like she's not a.
She is an internet singer. She became famous from the internet, and only the internet. And I think if she ever loses the fandom, she will lose her career.
I could also be old and irrelevant,
which is why
so I don't trust
joining camps with Taylor Swift when she was at internet peak was a smart move on her part, because it did land and people were stoked about it.
Yes. Yeah. So I think there's a lot of that. A lot of, like, I would say comedy is at its peak right now too. I feel like we're finally out of that like super censored like culture. Like saying gay is back, saying retarded is back. Like I remember
faggot is back.
Like all these things that were so taboo from like that same time period, like 2018 to like 2023. I would say just now, like everyone it kind of happened overnight too. And I think that comedy,
I think almost
really
cancel. When was the last serious cancellation you've seen out of an internet person?
Like 2022.
It's been a while. I think 2019 to 2022 was peak cancel culture. And it always seemed like the internet was fighting over someone and hating on someone at one time. And we would just leap from lily pad to lily pad, person to person.
Yeah.
But I have not seen much of that. And maybe it's the algorithms. Maybe the algorithms wanted us to be engaging in cancel culture. Yeah. But I don't know. Maybe we've just changed, or maybe the internet's just changed. Yeah. So who knows if that'll come back anytime soon. But I'm happy about it. I didn't like cancel culture. I felt like it was super counterproductive. I felt like it encouraged people to be way too overly amped up over a person that they have never met before, that they will never meet before, and just waste more time on the internet than was needed, and that removed them from their daily in-person lives in the world.
Do you want to hear my theory on this?
Yes.
Okay. So I have a theory. Okay. I think that why we got into this like streak of cancel culture, like wokeism, all that stuff, and like why that was cool for so long was because we went through there was a lot of things going on, a lot of dynamics. Obviously Trump was a part of that, but I think we were in a revenge of the nerds situation. So the nerds kind of took over for a bit of time. That was when it was like a lot of plus size models, a lot of people be rude. Like, I'm glad that they're there, but I'm not talking like just normal plus size. I'm talking like
morbidly obese,
like a Lizzo situation.
Like a morbidly obese.
Like the girls on Lizzo's show. I know Tim Dillon has touched on this years ago, but the girls on her show would not be dancers in a sane society. Is all I'm saying.
No,
okay,
only in 2020. Only in the 2020s have we reached that. Yes.
So it's been a Revenge of the Nerd situation. Again, I haven't seen the film, but I like the title, so I'm going with that. It was a lot of people that, wouldn't get into a sorority. And I don't even like sororities. Like, we've already established that we are not, like, in that culture.
And we were in a sorority, so we have some inside knowledge, which is why we're allowed to have an opinion on that. And I'm glad that, we've come to that conclusion.
Yeah. And there was, like, pros and cons, but ultimately, like, I would say I'm less of a sorority girl than a sorority girl if I had to pick a camp. Anyways, but I think it's fine to have a group that, like, there's some, life is finding your crowd and groups that are cliquey and figuring out, do you want to be in that or do you not? Or, and that's part of life. And that's just, jobs are selective. Like, everything has a selection process. So for you just to be like, we're just going to get rid of that altogether, I don't think that was the right move. But I think a lot of people, were getting into colleges and stuff because they were riding this wave of, like, I'm a nerd, I'm different. Like a lot of the transgender stuff was to, like, get attention. I'm not saying there aren't people with body dysmorphia and stuff,
but
just
how unique can I be?
How unique can I be?
How different can I be in this world of so many humans that are so similar? And I think a pretty heroic thing is actually not trying to reject everyone else, but just realizing, wait, I'm like a lot of other people, and that's okay. Like, do you see what I mean?
Well, yes, but I agree. But my thing too is more when people were, I'm trying to be unique, they kept doing that with other groups, but it wasn't just, I'm authentically me. It still didn't feel very authentic. They kept going for a group.
They would orient themselves to the group.
Yeah, like, I'm non-binary. That makes me unique. But, like, being non-binary is under a category. Like, a lot of people could be non-binary. Being unique is you're Jordan Kraft. Like, there's no one. You're irreplaceable. Like, no one will ever exist ever. Like, you could have an identical twin and they are not going to be you.
Yes.
And, like, we don't talk about that. And I'd like that. I'd love to talk about that.
Yeah, and there's so much more that goes beyond your physical appearance, your fashion sense, the labels or things that you've been through in your life. How about just how you think about things or how you perceive the world or what you like? I mean, it's just so nuanced. So, yeah, I like to see aspects of culture moving away from categories and labels and groups that you have to subscribe to or stay subscribed to, almost as if it's a religion, and just kind of live more in the gray area, embrace that, And I think you'll find uniqueness, identify with your uniqueness in that gray area.
Yeah.
But I love that quote of Revenge of the Nerds, though. I think that's great.
Yeah. So we're now kind of coming back to a state of norm, like just, I would say a little bit more normal from that like Revenge of the Nerd period. And I think that people are realizing, you know, like it's okay to want to, like, I'm not saying everyone needs to be some like supermodel. I don't think so, but like, it's okay to want to be your most attractive self, whether that's physically, whether that's being healthy, whether that's having good habits, whether that's taking responsibility. Like a lot of that Revenge of the Nerds culture is like, the world's the problem. There's nothing I need to do to change. Like the world isn't accepting of me.
What's wrong with a glow up? A glow up doesn't just have to be physically. It can be your whole life. You can have a glow up with your finances or with your family or with your health or with your, you know, physical appearance. You can have so many different types of glow ups, and I'm associating other terms that people might be familiar with just to encapsulate this one big idea. And yeah, I agree. I think it's in to care.
Yes, into care.
And what are nerds good at? They're good at caring and almost like obsessing over things. Like nerds obsessing over, I don't know, like the traditional perception of a nerd was they were obsessed with, like, I don't know, a movie franchise or a video game or whatever. So it's almost like channeling that kind of passion into something that's good, that's going to serve you, that you love. And if that means you're caring more about your health or your whatever aspect of your life, then yeah, I think that's great.
Yeah, I think that's
dorky.
No, but yeah, and I'm saying that the people, I feel like the weird nerd, like the weird uniqueness stuff that was inauthentic, that they were kind of being like the Revenge of the Nerds energy. Because for so long they felt like they couldn't find a place. And now it's like, okay, let's just all be okay with some normalcy.
Yeah.
And like striving towards what you said, like those glow ups and really holistic roundabout things.
Yeah. Instead of trying to find your place, maybe you just create your place.
Yeah, I know. And I feel like we talked about this on the last podcast, but so much has happened this last week with like what articles are being floated, the debate, etc.
Yeah.
I feel like we talked about briefly in the last episode about how I've been seeing a lot of people, especially like in New York and stuff, who I would say probably identify as like a Democrat or vote Democrat, saying like, I regret voting for Joe Biden, or at least like it was embarrassing to vote for Joe Biden, like, or it was embarrassing that we were like not actively like celebrating it in those huge parties. And it seems like that has finally kind of hit a little bit. Just like the Emperor's clothes people are finally realizing the Emperor's clothes have been off for the last 4 years. And some people did see that 4 years ago, but now it seems like everyone's kind of getting on the same page across the board, including the media. So what's kind of your take on that?
I have a lot of takes from since the debate. Okay. I did watch the debate. I watched the whole thing. I did watch clips of reviews and debriefs of it after from other political commentators and news channels. So I think that I've gathered somewhat of a consensus from a couple different groups of people as well as my own.
Okay.
To be honest, I was not surprised by a single thing of that debate. I found it really entertaining hearing a commentator be like, what? Like, where did this come from? Like, no, how have you been not paying attention in the slightest since 2019 when it was even suggested that Joe Biden was going to run for president? So I knew it from one of the first debates, even in 2020, before he got elected. Okay. So none of this was new to me. But what I did realize is, just the amount of people that have been tuned out of the news at large to have not seen this, like behavior, some of these things that were talked about in the debate. I really feel like a lot of people have just tuned out the news and have been totally detached and distracted on other media formats, and have just not realized the things that have been going on these past 4 years.
I have a question. How many people do you think that now have come to that realization, honestly, authentically didn't know or did not realize that Joe Biden was as bad as he is? Or how many people do you think knew it, but it wasn't fashionable? Admit that, and now it is fashionable to admit that?
I think it's the latter.
Okay.
I think the latter.
Have you noticed that it's also, and I'm in agreement with that, both on a media landscape and on an individual landscape, How fashionable now do you think it is to say
to be pro elder abuse?
No, that too, but like to be hyperbolic. We're living in the end times. Our country, like the adults are not in the room. It seems like that is also now fashionable, whereas when we were doing that in 2020,
we've been doing that, and we were getting side eyes,
like we were nuts,
weird looks, because we were doomsdayers or QAnon or whatever, conspiracy theorists, whatever label you want to associate to that. But now, yeah, you're completely right. I love the word fashionable there, because it is. It's popular to call it what it is, because we're literally seeing news articles that are telling us we're in World War III.
Women are getting drafted.
Women are getting drafted. So this is a day-to-day occurrence now, where we're seeing extreme things like this. So we are all much more used to it. Therefore, kind of being hysterical and calling it what it is, and leaning into the fashionable culture aspects of it is in.
It is very in, just like kind of the Americana stuff is in, just like cancel culture is now out. Like there's just such a huge
epiphany.
Yes.
We have leaned into the Americana stuff this summer because maybe it was the last. Maybe it was the last time we had that.
Wow.
I'm just connecting those dots because we were talking earlier today about just, all of the Americana stuff. Everyone leaning, like the amount of articles of how to dress up for the 4th, how to, have your best 4th of July ever.
It's our last hurrah.
Here are all the dishes you can bring to your barbecue that you were invited to. Like just everything like that. Really glamorizing it, trying to hit on every traditional thing as if it's the last time.
Didn't it feel kind of unauthentic?
It's weird.
It was weird. It's kind of like World War II when it was like, everyone do your part for the war effort. Like, do your part.
Yeah.
Like the poster of the women going like this.
Wring out as much of this as you can while you have it.
Enjoy it while it lasts, folks. I've been living that line for like the last 2 years because
since COVID.
We were thinking like this before it was fashionable. So I think that's why you and I have kind of, and people that have been on our timeline in terms of our discovery process, I think that's why we're actually the most calm out of everyone right now.
Because nothing shocks us anymore.
We went through the 5 stages of grief of losing the America we were brought out to think. Like kind of like we talked about, we had to relearn our history, and our history is so tied to our identity, and we already had our identity shattered and destroyed and cut up into a million pieces.
We started in on those 5 stages of grief earlier than a lot of people. Yes. So we've kind of gone through those more trivial and difficult grieving moments. Whereas maybe, some people are starting to go through that now, and it's difficult.
It's very difficult.
It's difficult no matter when you go through it.
And I think that we also, people that are in this now awakened period or want to be part of this awakening process. I think that we've all come to some conclusion, whether no matter what religion you're in, like I think everyone in that camp has realized this is a spiritual war to some extent. It's totally spiritual. Nothing new under the sun is one of my like favorite saying. It's a very timeless biblical saying. It's just like there's always good and evil. There's always this battle. And it's really at the same degree.
I love that quote because it's freeing to realize that things are so simple.
Yes.
And not uncharted.
Correct.
Yeah. There's cycles to things. It's not, it might have different faces. It might look different, but it's repeating very similar patterns that the world is not foreign to.
Yeah.
So I find that very grounding.
And speaking of patterns, I think both you and I went into this year, I think realizing it's gonna be shaky, and there's a lot of different ways it could go. Especially when we saw how we've seen the 2020 blueprint, so we know that there's somewhat of a blueprint here. Although I think that too many people woke up during 2020 that they can't use the exact same blueprint. Although I think that would have been the most ideal situation. So it's kind of like watching a movie where you like know some of the plot points potentially, but you don't know fully how it's gonna like that season's gonna fully wrap up. Like we saw a trailer, but we haven't seen the like.
So if 2020 was the trailer, then yeah, we have a glimpse, but we don't know. It's still gray. It's a black, it's darkness.
And I forget about some of the things that could happen, and I get reminded, like, something scarier will pop up, and I'll get fixated on that, and then I'll remember, oh wait, that was that other thing that, like, I thought, you know, like, there's so many different.
And then there's always like that outlier random event that happens, like the Titanic submarine blowing up, and that takes over the news cycle for 2 weeks, and it distracts from the next major bill getting passed or whatever. Yeah, I love that trailer metaphor. That's perfect. Yeah, I wanted to ask you, just going back to 2020, because if anyone listening doesn't know, a lot of times election seasons, especially the year of elections, there are very similar patterns with, we go from the debates to then, you know, like we get into like ballot stuff and then counting votes and then so on and so on. So what of that year do you think pattern wise could reappear this year as we get closer? We're still several months out. And yeah, what do you think will be drastically different?
Okay. I actually think there's more that's different than the same, although I think because I think, okay, if we are in this spiritual war, or at least this war for the country, the soul of the country, like, let's not even make it global yet, let's just keep it like US based. The landscape is different than it is in 2020 because the players are different. I think the awakened force of people that held the country to bay during COVID, like, we are so much stronger now. We're so much wiser, and we've seen a lot more war strategy. We went into 2020 having no foresight into war strategy. We went into it thinking at first, like, COVID is a real disease that could kill us. Like, and the government is here to take care of us.
We didn't even know the stats of what COVID was.
A lot of people didn't.
How many people die?
People didn't have vaccine hesitancy then. People didn't. There was a lot of different things. We also didn't. We had a election that didn't have. I think it was a lot more clear. We didn't see the election fraud claims yet. Obviously, we had that with Hillary, but it was a different scenario because it was Russiagate. I felt like that was different than actually saying you didn't win the election because of ballots logistically not being counted correctly or ballots being lost, and we didn't have election like not end on election night. That was the first time where election was dragged out. Granted, Bush versus Gore, that was its own thing, but that went to the Supreme Court. It was a different thing than, like, literally the ballots took weeks to finalize. And, like, leading up to inauguration, it took, like, is this really going to happen or not? There was so much unknown, and it felt like there was no process in place to really resolve that discrepancy. And it still to this day has never been resolved. Like, at least the Supreme Court resolved it. I'm not saying that was the right way to do it, but it resolved. And there's like a clear line in the sand. We don't have that. And pre-2020, we always, I think, thought elections are safe and secure. And then after the presidential election, we had the Georgia election, same pattern. And then we had the Arizona election, same pattern. So I think that we're very, like, disgruntled about elections on both sides. Like, I think that there's just a lot of
going back to, you know, the thought of going back to actually finding out a clear winner the day of, like, that just seems so beyond my level of comprehension now, because I'm so desensitized to that as a reality, been strung along. Like, that's what the norm is now. So I'd like to get back to that, though. I think that it heightens emotions in that year because of the rioting and protests and violence that was happening all over the country. Emotions were so pent up, and that just continued on with the trend of keeping us pent up until I think these powers that be just wanted so many Americans to just let it go and unify, quote unquote, unify.
Oh, I remember that.
Embrace the decision.
I hated that word when that came up. And we're going to be a unified country.
Yeah, we're going to be a unified country, build back better, all of these quotes. And for a lot of us, me included, that was really hard for me to pivot emotionally. I felt like I just was a pawn, like, in a game. Like, they just toyed with my emotions and they weren't valid. And, you know, these claims that we were making after seeing real proof of the data of, ballot harvesting and some of these votes that we have no idea where they even came from. Yeah, to discount those proofs and people's skepticism toward that also felt like another slap in the face. Like as a pawn, you're just knocking us over. Like after all this that we've been through, it just, it felt like a game.
It's like when a conflict happens in school and the other person was antagonizing you, and then you finally say enough and do something drastic, and then the teacher goes, "You're the problem," and then you go to the counselor's office,
it's you,
and then
you're just a kid, but it's not you.
Then you go to the counselor's office, and they're like, "You need to just kiss and make up and unify and go on your way." And you're like, "No, like I actually want to
I want to hash this out.
I want to hash this out. Like I want to dissect the problem. I don't want to sweep this under the rug. I want to like see the ugly truth and like get to the bottom of it."
Basic psychology. Yeah, that's a really relatable example that perfectly encapsulates that feeling of just not being heard in any way.
Yeah, and that could happen in a relationship too. Like if you're with someone that is more avoidant, like, and you kind of have a healthier attachment style and they're avoidant, and you're like, no, like I want to have this discussion. Like I want to get to the bottom of this and
speak my mind.
I want to have a resolution. And they're just like, just forgive me and let's like sweep this under the rug. And you're
that's
like,
actually the easier route, but what you're sacrificing by brushing that under the rug, like even going back to, if you have a trauma that happens in your life and you psychologically bury that under the rug because you want to handle it later or work through that later, that doesn't mean it doesn't go away. You just are hiding that in a different part of your brain. Like I find it more productive to just do it there and now when it's the time to do that. And I think that would have been really good housekeeping for us to do as a country, to work out all of the logistical reasons as to why that happened and help bring back that security and trust across the country so that we're more set up for the next election. We can be more prepared and not put us all in that fight or flight state again. That was not fun.
For sure. A few more dynamics just really quickly to answer your question that I see.
Yes.
One is that I think the media is in a stage of gaslighting us right now, versus in 2020 there was a lot of lies and manipulation, which those are two different things. Lies and manipulation is like, take the COVID vaccine, it's safe and effective. But that's really not what's going on. Versus now it's like been published, oh, Fauci made up, like literally left, like everyone in the news, CNN, like all the groups are all saying basically social distancing and masks like didn't work. You now have the governor of New York wanting to ban face masks because she says that it's something with crime. Like, but we were told face masks, like we have to, like there's so much gaslighting. We're seeing this with the debate. Like you just said, we all knew, sorry, if you have eyes, you could see Joe Biden when he got elected. He ain't gonna, like, it's a miracle. He did better than I thought in the debate. Like I'm actually like, wow, he did a great job. Like all
I wanted them to release the cocktail recipe.
Yeah,
what was he on? Because that was inspiring, and I want to try that out. But yeah,
like we're in a gaslighting.
It was a debate.
Yeah,
I thought that the moderators for that debate were better than any of the moderators from the 2020 debates.
What do you think about those side by side videos where you see like Mitt Romney and Obama versus like?
Oh, where they actually shake hands
Trump
and look
Biden,
each other in the eye and say, hey, pleasure to see you. And then they actually
do you think that that's better or actually kind of scarier?
It's scarier because they hate each other.
Or do you know that they're on the same team?
Or that they're on the same team.
Which is even scarier.
Yeah.
Like they know how it's going to go. Like they make a deal. Like they know, like Mitt Romney, like they're like...
That's a good take. I haven't thought about that.
Like
when I saw those clips, the first thing that came to mind was, okay, they're obviously running against each other. They are putting so much effort into this. Obviously, each of them want to win. Where are they going to be super bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and excited to see the other person? But yeah, I never thought about them potentially being on the same team.
Well, Mitt Romney's a never Trumper, right? So why is he a never Trumper? Because he knows that under a Trump administration, you don't get what you want if you've been playing by the rules for all these years. He knows that there's a chaos in versus in Obama, like that the old system we had, it was always, and I still think it is one party, but right now there's a lot of disruption. You have Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who should be the Democrat nominee. In a true election, he would have been the Democrat nominee, but they never gave him a chance. So, and they didn't even let him on this debate stage which I disagree with.
Yeah, same.
And the lies of we've never been able to, like, oh, you can't have a third party candidate. I think in 2020, a lot of the traditional media route was still happening, like how you had to promote yourself, you had to do Fox interviews and CNN interviews. Now it's like you go on a podcast, like you go on Jake Paul's podcast, and that Joe Rogan, like,
can we talk about that? Donald Trump went on Logan Paul's podcast,
Logan Paul, excuse me,
a week before probably the most viewed debate of all time. I mean, I don't know how that connection happened, but I think Trump was smart to do that because so much of his Gen Z base is not watching. We've rejected traditional media. We don't have cable TV. We are not listening to the radio in our cars. We're watching YouTube videos and podcasts and podcast clips. Yeah, it was smart for him to reach that new audience, have a diversified approach as opposed to just sticking to these traditional ways that we've done things in terms of advertising and media.
Yeah, and I've seen a lot of, I feel like because of him now being quote unquote a felon or whatever, like I feel like he's gotten a lot of that cool factor returned to him. And I think that's also partially of the era of Revenge of the Nerds sizzled down a little bit. And it's now that we're kind of back in that culture. Like, you know, like a lot of rappers like rapped about him. Like he was kind of this like cultural icon for whatever reason.
Yes.
And it seems like he's now kind of tapping into that, but with a newer generation. And I think that his team must be taking cues from Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s team, because even though I don't think F. Kennedy Jr. has a chance of winning, I think that he has paved the way of how to do elections, which is like he's done all the major podcasts. His network is comedians. Like he's best friends with Theo Vaughn. He's best friends with Tim Dillon. Yeah. Like Joe Rogan is very supportive of him. You know, I think he's
been very respectful.
He's very respectful, but you can tell he's not like in the establishment. He has that like traditional American patriotism that's important. And I think that the way that he like does clips and stuff, it just seems like Trump's team is like smartly pulling from that. And you can kind of see that pay off a little bit. I don't know. It seems like all that is shifting. And I think that's also why the debate doesn't feel as like formal and stuff. Also, it was like, do you think it was like staged in the fact that they either wanted to give Biden one last chance to see if he could make it, or they wanted him to intentionally fail early enough for it to be before the DNC convention, which is in August, so that they could do a switcheroo?
I think both.
Okay.
I think since the State of the Union address, I think the reception being mostly positive from people after, like a lot of people were saying that he had a pretty good State of the Union.
He really did.
Obviously it was scripted or whatever. So I think that they agreed to do the debate based off of that seemingly positive response.
Okay.
If he didn't have that as a pre-context within the last several months, I don't think that he would have done it, or his team would have agreed to put him up there. Like they threw him to the wolves, literally. But yeah, I do think that there was a bit of a setup there because, like, what did they expect? This is him versus Donald Trump, who's clearly very, very sharp still at his age. And he's not a nice, like, pushover guy. That is not a great environment for someone like Joe Biden at his age right now and in his condition to be able to show his teeth in. Especially where there's no, like, escaping. No. There's no like, script or anything to fall back on. It's live. It's not a pre-recorded. What'd you think of, I thought that Jake Tapper and what was Diana something? I thought the moderators cut Biden off at the end of his segments more than Trump. Yes. And that was surprising to me because I noticed in 2020's debates, he never got that. They wanted him to keep talking. It seemed like Trump had a little bit actually like less airtime, but Biden overall he had less airtime, but Biden they cut more, which I don't think they cut him to protect him from not saying more dumb stuff. I don't think they cut him enough, to be honest. Really, I thought that they did because there were several times they're like time and like yeah. I know that this debate they agreed to no audience and that your mic could get muted, which I actually think was in Trump's favor. Weirdly enough, because when Trump has an audience, he becomes kind of this
comedian and he plays to the audience and he improvs a lot more and he gets kind of nastier and more like
he feels the energy.
Yeah, like not as like presidential, and he like says stuff off the cuff more. Whereas when he doesn't have the audience, he's a lot more like composed, I would say. So actually, weirdly enough, I think that was in his advantage.
This was the most presidential version of his personality that I've seen.
Yes, I would agree.
Outside of just a speech where he's the only one talking in a more conversational environment like it was in the debate.
I mean, those Hillary debates were brutal.
I know.
Like, I've rewatched some of those just for like comedy, and it's
pure entertainment.
So entertaining.
I need to rewatch one of those. I need to do that. That sounds like fun. Yeah, I know. It was a new format. I liked it. Do we think there's going to be another debate? I doubt it. I don't think they need another. Like, we have drawn such drastic conclusions from just this one debate that I don't think that another debate is going to sway any people back from that.
It depends on if they switch Biden out or not. If they don't, I don't think that Trump's team will agree to another one because they're going to be like, this is like solidified. Like, why do another one when that went well for us? That's my feeling. I just don't see how they don't switch him. There's a lot of reasons why they can't.
Well, if he says is staying in, they can't switch him out, right?
But then I'm wondering,
it has to come from him to step down for them to have.
They get him in a room, and he's the most. There's so much blackmail on him, like the laptop, like, I'm sorry, you get him in a room, like, I don't buy that he's just like not stepping down. Something to me is like not, maybe Jill is that crazy, and I don't know.
That's the person I want documentary on, is Jill Biden.
I know.
Dr. Jill, whatever she's.
The substitute teacher.
Who knows what kind of doctor she is. She's a witch doctor is what she is. But I mean, she walks him on and off stage. She's probably the one making the concoctions of whatever he's taking. And do that to your significant other of decades. Like, it's sad. It honestly is very sad and concerning.
But again, I don't know. I'm curious. There's so many different scenarios at play. Either this is all just like she's in on it, or she's gone rogue. Because in my mind,
or she's the president.
No, Obama's the president. No, in my mind.
I agree.
And she's probably there. Maybe there's a power dynamic, but there's no way they can't. Like, there's no way Obama's not holding the blackmail over their head. Like, that family has so much stuff, and the media protected them for so long. I mean, that the suppression of the laptop story on Twitter alone that we found out through the Twitter files, which Elon is another wild card in this whole election that we didn't have in 2020. Twitter being like totally free speech, having Alex Jones back on, reinstating Trump, like all these people, like I think
it's in the public's favor. I think
forced Instagram, like Meta and YouTube and TikTok, frankly, to not censor as much. Like, I just do not, like, I remember during 2020, so much of those tags of like COVID misinformation or election misinformation, and now like everyone's on the same page. The media is telling you what's happening. Like, they're straight up being like,
as long as you can read and you're literate, they're telling us what's happening. It's not as cryptic as it was in 2020, or not even cryptic, but them just not telling us any information that was correct.
Or it was like they were playing the opposite game.
The pendulum has swung back to the other side, where now they're spoon feeding it to us because we haven't been trusting them, and they're almost doubling down. But
this is why it's getting so interesting, because I never would have thought. I just would have thought that the switcheroo would have been a lot more smooth, and now we're seeing this like power struggle, and I don't know how much of the power struggle is authentic or not, and it's really fascinating because it could be authentic. Like, Dr. Jill and Hunter could be that crazy, or they could be playing a part to act like there's a power struggle so that people like they can be the scapegoat bad guys and someone can sweep in and have that savior complex. Because I think if you just smoothly were like, we're moving on to Newsom or moving on to Kamala, I don't think people would have it as easily as paint the Bidens as a villain and this is your only saving grace because this option is so horrible. Like, we've made all the options so bad that people are conditioned to pick the lesser of two evils. And that kind of feels like what the setup is right now. Although it could be just that Jill's rogue. I don't know.
I think the Obama involvement is probably the most accurate.
Okay.
And I've been following Obama for years, especially on Twitter. He still tweets, and he actually tweeted right after the debate, and he said something about Biden just had an off day, or Biden just had an off night. Like, that's okay, right? That happens to people. Like, he said something like that. And I don't know what that means. Is he trying to diffuse? Was that just an honest, like, I don't know, I'm not working with Biden?
I mean, he's definitely not endorsing him right now. It seems like.
But is that a cover that he's obviously the most helpful and contributive person to the Biden campaign, so he's not admitting it?
Yeah.
Is it a reverse psychology scheme?
I don't know. I just don't know.
I don't either. I don't either.
It's interesting though.
We'll just put these questions out to you guys while you're listening, and
I don't know. Like, do you think that I still have the question? This is the biggest one. Like, will Big Mike do it? Like, will she step up to the plate and do it? Because she's like their only shot at this point.
We're not even going to clarify what Big Mike is, because if you're listening to this and if you've gotten this far on the podcast, you know.
But okay,
he's big. She's big in a lot of ways.
Okay, that's the thing.
She's a big personality.
She is. I'm dead serious. No, I have a lot of questions because, like, they have blackmail on her. They have blackmail on him. They want to protect their legacy, right?
They as in who?
The Obamas.
Yeah.
Like, and here's another power dynamic that gets even crazier. I think there's a power dynamic between the globalist World War III, burn it to the ground Satanists, let's call them. Like, we sold our soul to the devil. Not to say that our politicians here haven't sold their soul to the devil, but I think it's been in smaller ways, like maybe not a direct deal, but more like a deal with money or a deal with power or a deal with just like corruption, like slow corruption, as opposed to like literal like dark demonic forces. And I know I'm getting very like supernatural here, but I have a point. I think that
we cannot stop ourselves.
I think this is a power dynamic struggle, because I think Obama's like, the Obamas of the world are like, you know what? Don't want it to go to Trump. I want the corruption, the U.S., how it operates, to stay operating how it is.
Yeah.
And I'm hanging out with some of the globalists here and whatnot, and like doing some negotiations or whatever. And I love the world war machine and all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
But I don't think that they want World War III, because I think that they're smart enough to know that that means that their house in Martha's Vineyard or the coast of California could get nuked. Like, I think that they're smart enough to know that World War III could get out of their hands, and they personally
get affected. Now why they're actually telling us the news? Is that now why they're
I don't know. I don't know.
Things as is and handling these debates as is and being good. Like, is that why all of this seems so much more clean cut right now? Is because they're trying to seriously pivot us away from World War III because they've recognized that it started?
I don't know. I think
if we gotten too far in.
I think it depends on who. I don't know. The answer is I don't know. I think it's kind of like the Jill thing. Like, is she in or out of it? In on it or not? I think there's two ways. I think it either is that scenario where the Obamas, the kind of institutional elite, the adults in the room that run our country,
the
aristocrats that make sure, like, okay, things are actually decent. The fact that a dementia patient is running our country, like, things are okay. All things considered.
Yeah, like, I can go to Nantucket.
Yeah, like, it's fine. Not fine, but like, it's fine. Okay. I think that it's either like they realize like a World War III is a step too far, or they're like, no, we're in on World War III, or they have to be in because of they owe a debt to someone higher up than them. I don't know. And they're in on World War III because that might be the only way that pulls us out of moving in a America First rebellion, period.
Yes.
Like, World War III might be the only thing that at this point can stop the momentum of the awakened people.
You think having the war would be?
Yeah, that could. I'm saying that is a theory that I have. That having the war could be the only thing that stops this election. Like, they've already pulled all their other cards. Like, they pulled COVID, they pulled election. I don't know what other cards they have.
No, it feels so great to realize that so many more people have woken up. I really think the last 3 years for sure, like the whole tone has shifted. Even with new people that I meet, I don't feel like I'm afraid to be honest about what I see, because when I have been recently with totally new people that I meet, it's been received in the same way. It's been, wait, yeah, I think the same thing. So I've been noticing that a lot more. Like 2020, that was pretty unheard of for me. I felt like every time I talked to someone or opened my mouth, they just would look at me in a really disturbed way. So yeah, I do think that I agree with you that the awakening has definitely happened, and it's increasing at an exponential rate. But I don't know. If world I don't know. I don't know what I have so many thoughts right now. That
I have so many thoughts. Like, there's so many ways it could
trying
go.
to decide. I might have to just sit on that for food for thought. But I think that we're in agreement that beginnings or a prequel to World War III, we're already in it.
Yes.
We've already seen it.
Yeah, we're already
so
in it.
we're not talking about World War III anymore as this hypothetical, irrational, potential thing. We're in it.
Yeah, we're in it.
So I think that we should call that what it is, because yeah, I don't want a World War III. We cannot have World War III in a full-fledged actual format that's even close to World War I or World War II. It'll be so much worse. So I am not on the side. I am not pro-war. Like, I want us to have our awakening and fight against these powers and this corruption without agreeing to world war. So that's, I think, the camp that I want to be on.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know for sure which of our politicians and our elites are pro World War III or not. It does seem, though, like from a policy perspective, globally and nationally, we are heading in that direction. Like you said, the draft, I've never in our lifetime have we had the draft been talked about.
For anyone who doesn't know, this has only come out of the last 2 weeks. Random weekday where a bunch of articles were surfacing and tweets surfacing about lawmakers in DC beginning to discuss mandating women in the draft. Not only mandating men aged 18 to 26, but including women.
Yeah.
And since we've blurred the lines the past 10 years of gender and roles and sexuality and men and women at large.
And changing it on your birth certificate.
Yes.
Yeah.
That makes this discussion so much more complicated. And I have a feeling that it won't. I don't know.
It won't happen.
I don't think that it will happen. But the fact that that's even
on the table
after what we've learned from these previous wars and everything we've been through, feminism, like, look what feminism has brought us, you guys.
Okay, can I tell you what I just came to me?
Yes, please.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. No, keep going.
I'm wrapping that up. I wanted to let everyone know, if you haven't seen articles of that, please go do some research into the debate of women being mandated to be drafted. Because
it's coming back to me. I have my final decision on how I think this is going to go. It's all coming back to me.
You have seen the end of days.
It's all coming back to me. Okay. It's this one comment that Alex Jones made. It's just like, it made it all click. Okay. And it's coming back to me. I forgot. Okay. I don't know if there will. I think that we are gearing up for World War III. Whether it will go to full nuke territory or not, I don't know. And it's unpredictable because we've pissed Russia off. And I don't know what's going on with China, but there's a lot of like sketchy things that I think are out of our control. And I think those countries are not on the side of like the World Economic Forum and stuff either. So the World Economic Forum doesn't have like control over them either. So I think that there's a lot of like inner power, like bad people are all fighting for power right now, which you always have during a consolidation of power. There's always infighting. Okay, so take that aside.
And they're all big.
So take that aside. And they all team up when it's convenient. And then when it's time to consolidate power, they all like fight again. Okay, so it's not always like good versus evil. It's sometimes evil versus evil. So anyways, like, okay, take that aside. And I don't know, I'm talking fast, but I want to like make my point really quickly so you can chime in. Okay, I think what's going to happen is they could not use COVID was not scary enough for people to get enough people on the same page to accept like the 2030 agenda. And I think that for a while we've thought, okay, we won that war. We won that battle. Excuse me. We did not win that war. We won the battle of COVID. We did. We got rid of the vaccine mandate globally. That was a huge win. Huge win. Like pat ourselves on the back. Like, we deserve that win. That was a battle, not the war. The war is still going on. And I think that they've geared up Like they've tried to float bird flu, whatever. People are not scared. People don't care. You could tell me Ebola's coming and I probably won't believe you. Like you've dissuaded me so much from your medicine and stuff. So people are fearless now, but they need something else. And I think the only thing for me really, and a lot of people that would terrify you, is a physical war, because we're so detached from like death in that sense and violence in that sense and nukes. And I think that what they will say is, okay, everyone's drafted, but if you don't want to be drafted, instead of paying your way out of the draft, like in the old days or whatever, or faking injury, whatever, they're going to say, accept the 2030 agenda and you're out. Give up your license under these conditions, carbon tax, digital ID, all the things that COVID, the vaccine passport was trying to get us to do, but we just didn't refuse, and the technology wasn't there yet. I think that there's this rapid push to like get that 2030 agenda, and I feel like World War III.
They don't have a figure either,
and
they don't have a representative that can connect and convey that agenda. Fauci was it for a while with COVID, but we got that guy. We got that motherfucker. Like he gone. No one trusts that guy. But right now, there's no figure that represents the 2030 agenda to sell it in a charismatic way. It's all old men. Like it's the Gateses of the world. It's Soros. It's, these people that focus on this and fixate on it, but are not going to speak to our generation to get, to push that, to get it over across the finish line. But I do really like that take that they could use the draft as
like a carrot,
as like a blackmail.
Yeah, blackmail. And actually there was an article, I wish I had the article in front of me, but from the UK where they're already floating that idea, which again, we just laid the groundwork that the media this time is going to tell us exactly what they're doing. So pay attention. So they've already started to float that idea in the UK, is that like in exchange for like not having to be part of the draft, you could give up like certain liberties.
Okay, I like that take a lot.
So
what are your thoughts on a potential grid outage?
So that's
where does that fall in the mix? Is that another conditioning event to prep us for more of the World War III future happenings? Or is that going to be proof that we're in it? Or is it going to be an exercise? I kind of, how I've thought of the possibilities of a grid outage, I've always seen it as another exercise, not as an actual like if we were to have a power grid outage, it would be terrifying. I don't think people realize with how much is electric and how much of all of our careers require access to power. If you thought COVID made us go crazy, a real power grid outage, which could totally happen, would be that on steroids.
And faster.
And actually more people would die because so much more of the food supply and water and all of our energy and even how we treat people who are sick requires power. So it's not just a means of, do we have access to ventilators and vaccines or, saline at the emergency room to treat this like super dire need COVID patient. This will be crazy. So I think about this scenario a lot because we know from COVID and from transcripts from meetings of these globalists prior to 2020, that they met and they discussed the possibility of a pandemic. And we did a whole episode on this if you guys want to listen. But yeah, I feel like you'd be crazy to not think at least at some point in these meetings with these people, they haven't discussed that possibility, right? Maybe they don't have a plan in place for it, but nothing could put us more immobile and more in the hands or desperate need, powers and resources to be functioning than that exact scenario of losing power.
Yeah, I agree with everything that you said. Real quick, will you just check to make sure the video and audio are still good?
Yes.
Because I can't see.
Audio is good. This light, if that ever stops beeping, I've been looking at it, just let me know because I can't tell if it's running out of battery.
Okay, it's still recording. Okay, yay. We're good.
We can't lose this.
No.
It's too important.
But I thought that was a good, we could quickly edit that out. Okay.
Yeah, we will.
Okay, so I agree with everything that you just said. And before the whole World War III thing has really been like hardcore floated, I would say that's been like my biggest concern since like 2021, which I think you kind of agree, because I don't know when the World Economic Forum met, but I think they met sometime in between like 2020 and 2023, like where they went through this type of scenario similar to before COVID.
Well, they've been having their Davos conferences every year.
So it's definitely and it's always been in the back of my mind for a while now, even before COVID, just like not even intentionally, but just if that accidentally happened, or if like a foreign country did that to us as like warfare, like people always talk about like cyber warfare is going to be World War III, which I think it could be a component of it. But I think, I think recently in the last few years, I thought that it's going to happen this year at some point.
Same.
Which is why I decided not to internationally travel this year. Like I literally like made a conscious decision. Like I'm not internationally travel because I was like, I'm scared of that happening. Granted, if that happens while I'm in Phoenix, I'm probably screwed too, or like travel. But I don't know. Generally, it just was like a safe bet that I made. And I don't care if that sounds hyperbolic. I lived through COVID being in other countries, so I don't want to do that again.
Yeah, that'd be crazy.
But the scariest part to me is the crime that would happen. Like they've done like studies on this, and crime happens within like 12 to 24 hours. So let's just say, even if crime wasn't a factor, it would still be a disaster because of the food supply and all that stuff.
Oh yeah.
But just the crime alone, like you're screwed. Like crime is such a problem right now in all of our major cities, plus the illegal immigration issue of like how many criminals are coming in, how many like human traffickers, like all the, like, I don't know. I watched the Joe Rogan interview with Dr. Phil. Like he went down to the border and Brett Weinstein. And it's not people just coming from Mexico. Like there's people from China coming. Like
it's all over the world.
And it's all men. It's all young men. And you're seeing things like in Chicago pop up where they're like, they use COVID to fire all the rebellion people, all the people that worked in the institutions that, would be someone that would stand up in a Nazi Germany situation and be like, no, it's wrong to be working at a concentration camp. I don't care what you say. That's messed up. All those good actors in our government institutions, in our military, were all left because of the vaccine. Now, I'm not saying there weren't some that are good people that could pass the second test, that got the shot, but I'm saying the majority of the fighters, they have been weeded out of the institutions. We dated with two guys that literally were in that scenario. Both of them were in that scenario where they got dismissed from the Navy and the Air Force because they did refuse to get the COVID vaccine. And that speaks so much to their character, and I have so much respect for that, because that was my line in the sand, and everyone's gonna have a different line in the sand, but you need people in institutions that have a line in the sand.
They're a rare breed.
That know when to draw it. Otherwise, you will have your military force turn on you. And what's happening is these illegal immigrants that they're importing, not only are they becoming voters, not only are they causing disruption and crime, there's things like in Chicago where they're publishing articles that are saying the police now will take you to be a new policeman if you're an illegal, because we have a policing shortage. Oh, you think that person who just came into our country, didn't go through the process, doesn't love America,
who would not be able to go through anything to actually earn citizenship, is now given the keys to become a law enforcement officer
with a gun, and you can't have a gun in that city.
Yeah,
like you think that is a
that is
system
the most
you want to be under?
dystopian thing I've ever heard.
You don't want that. You don't want that. And what's also scary is, like, sorry to go here, but a lot of people in the U.S., we have a lot of Western people, especially in the U.S., we have an infertility crisis.
I think across the world, yeah. People don't realize that China's not had their 1 or 2 child policy for years. They're on the brink of like a real fertility collapse. Everyone is so unhealthy there that they are not having children. And America's on the way. We are so morbidly obese. Over a third of the country is obese. And a very large amount of that percentage is morbidly obese. And now we're creating these drugs and getting kids on drugs like Ozempic so early on.
Wait, kids are on Ozempic now?
Yeah, kids are, well, I think that's why they made it. It was this, trying to over supplement with a medication
For like diabetes.
And so how can a child, as their bodies are growing and developing, and they haven't even gotten through puberty yet, develop a healthy metabolism or a healthy body overall? So yeah, everything we're doing is just wrong. I mean, in every category, in terms of healthcare treatment, in terms of border control, in terms of just, this whole dialogue and the media news complex, just there's holes in everything. But I just wanted to get back to the power grid thing because I just came to so many realizations about, let's say hypothetically there's a plan, initiate it, and it's almost as thorough of a plan as COVID in terms of what time of year they choose to do it.
Do you think they'll blame it on climate?
Think of if they did it during the winter when the majority of the country and the world are going through the most extreme weather. If you live in a place where you don't have heat or access to heat, I mean, that's going to be really difficult. This would go beyond walking into a grocery store and not seeing food on the shelves. It would be that, plus there's no lights, plus there's no electronics,
plus people are trying to get in and steal because they're hungry.
Yes, yeah, and all of the doors even to get into certain grocery stores are electronic.
No, if you
they're sensor activated.
Everyone needs to. It's hard because even if you have the most prepping of plans, the most prepper plan ever, if you have your spot,
survivalist,
you have all of that set up. There's even let's say you get there, everything goes smoothly, you happen to be in town when it happens, you're not traveling, you're able to escape your city, which again, that's tough because a lot of the highways are probably going to get shut down within the 20 minutes.
Manhattan, those bridges, good luck getting over those.
Yeah.
If there's a power grid outage, those will be blocked. You will not be able to get off that island.
But okay, let's say you get out or let's say you already are out. You already live on a homestead. Okay. So it doesn't really affect you and you're already self-sufficient. You've been self-sufficient for years. They're going to come, the cities will go first. It's only a matter of time. How much more do you have? A year, 2 years max, more? I don't know. That's why I'm at the point where I don't I'm staying in a fun zone, because I can't.
Same.
I don't see.
I feel like it's an inevitability.
Yes. And there's no point in me stressing about it because we've already established we don't know how exactly it's going to go.
Yeah. We can't have control. We have to just let go of the control. I agree. I think that we're both in a good headspace about that.
and something
controlling what we can control, and then beyond that, it's
and it's
not up to us.
It's gonna be, if it's really scary, then I'll just have to deal with that when it happens. Now, I don't want to just throw it out and be I'm not gonna do any prep, whatever, because it's silly if you do know something's coming to then not be prepared. I think that that's very irresponsible. And I think when you look at even stories in the Bible or whatever, or fables, being unprepared when you're not supposed to is always looked down upon. That there's so many parables throughout my childhood.
Revenge of the Nerds.
What do you mean?
Embrace the nerdiness of, I don't know, maybe taking it seriously, and I don't know how far that is, but you're right.
Yeah, for example, the story of the women in the Bible who don't they need the oil in their candles to get to the wedding, and only one of them brings extra oil and the other two are foolish.
Yeah.
That, for example, is a story of you should be prepared. You need to be prepared. That doesn't mean you need to obsess, but you need to be prepared in whatever capacity you can. And so I do want to get to that place where I feel good. I did prepare as much as I can, so I don't feel foolish because I know better, but I'm not, like you said, I'm not going to stress about it because it's going to play out how it's going to play out. And the main thing I think is just spiritually prepping for the strength, say no to whatever temptations come your way to get you out to like make you back down from your morality. I think the most important thing is like working on your spiritual strength, because however it's going to go, it could get really ugly, and like you need to be prepared to like die for what
goes beyond buying supplies and having a stockpile of supplies
like
you might not
dying for what you believe is right.
Yes.
Like, and literally like getting to that mindset. And I'm not saying I'm there.
And you can lean on that spiritual crutch as well to make sure you keep that light there if times like that get dark.
Yeah.
So you have something.
So like hold on to.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. It's like a totem.
Yeah. So for me, I think about like Maximilian Kolbe, who was in the Nazi concentration camps. He's this priest, and this man, like they're doing the lineup where they like choose who's going to go into the starvation thing because someone misbehaves. So they have to make an example out of people. And they choose this one guy who, you know, he says like he pleads with the officer, I have a family, please don't let me go. Please have mercy. And Max McCulley's like, I'll do it. I don't have a family. That amount of like bravery is like so beautiful. And I just love those stories. I love those examples to pull from.
Self-sacrifice.
Because it's just hearing like, or people that die for their country or just beautiful, or their family. Just those stories. I love those stories because it makes me realize how much growth I need to do to like be prepared if that situation were to present itself. And how you prepare is like holding your line with the small things that like aren't life or death. Like the COVID thing, like that wasn't not life or death. No one had a gun to our head yet. It was just like, oh, we won't be able to go to a concert if we don't have a vaccine, or we can't maybe travel. Or like that, like those decisions like strengthen your will.
Yeah.
You know?
It's empowering. Looking back, I'm so glad because we made it out of that. And I made it out not giving up my values, not trading in my virtue, not trading in my freedom or my free will, or not trading in anything. So I love that. Yeah. Not holding your ground on things that you know you for sure can hold your ground on, and until it gets to be a much more harder decision where it's life or death, and then we'll cross that road when we get there. But I definitely am not a survivalist. I really have not done much prep. I'd say probably the closest thing I've done is any important document to me, or even photos, or anything that I've felt like I can have in a digital archive to some level. Like there's a lot of like family stuff and photos I've digitized. And I have like a 16 terabyte hard drive that I, every year, like clockwork, I offload from anywhere on the cloud onto this hard drive to keep a copy, because I think one of the first things that would go in a power grid outage is a lot of stuff on these servers. I mean, people don't realize that iCloud is not
foolproof.
A hard drive that you have in your phone. iCloud is somewhere else, and this is a company that probably somewhere in their terms and conditions
just
that
selling it to AI.
you sign for every year says that they aren't liable if something were to happen at a global level and your data got lost, that they're not liable for that. And we also don't have any laws protecting that data if that were to happen either. All of your photos, a lot of people find their identity, and, you know, memories are critical. I would rather lose my entire Spotify music library, and like I would lose anything. If I lose my photos and videos, I don't even know.
As we know,
I cannot even envision.
As we know from the camera story, which that was just photos from one event.
Yes.
Like, we know you are determined.
I am willing to go to the ends of the earth to get that. Yeah, to make sure I have those photos. We'll tell the camera story
another day.
Yeah, story for another day, and that's a great story. But as to Gen Z people who most likely care about those same things too, that can be in a digital format, at the very least, if you don't have a budget to prep for a power grid outage, you know, you can't buy a power generator, at the very least, try to be cognizant of that.
I love that.
Yeah, maybe keep some copies somewhere, even if it's a little flash drive.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think that that's a hard thing.
Yeah.
And it's budget friendly.
It is.
Budget friendly doomsday prepping.
I love that. Like we should make that, like we should make like a little like
Gen Z's guide to budget friendly doomsday prepping.
We should just handwrite it like a really cute note, and that can be our post for this episode.
Okay, I love that.
Like,
yeah,
we'll have to come up with that. But
I love that.
I honestly, I got through most of my stuff. I don't know. Do you have anything else? I mean, there was like a few things that I didn't touch on, but I feel like we kind of already.
I got through a lot. I have a question. I guess it'll be a good way we can wrap this up. A little off topic from what we were just talking about, but it's on a lighter note, so that's good. So the last 2 years, while we haven't been podcasting, we've still been learning and growing in a lot of different ways. Yeah. Both of us have gone to some comedy shows, but overall, what kind of live talk or show has been your most favorite of anyone you've seen live in the past couple of years?
Well, I feel like it's been our tradition of going to see our favorite boy, if you don't already know, Timmy D.
Our homeboy, Tim D.
Homeboy. We've been fans almost like pre-COVID of his. Like
about 5 years.
On the rise. I've seen him live every year now since 2021, and it's kind of like our yearly tradition that we go around my birthday. He's always out here. So yeah, I would say probably that, because he always does such a great job of taking a lot of these hyperbolic topics that I feel like otherwise would be so to talk about if you just were to like do it in the Ben Shapiro like straight way. Like it would just be so like horrible and like doomsday, and I don't like that.
Things are so dystopian. It's hard to voluntarily sign up to listen to that monotone tone for that long.
Some people think his stuff is like too dark to listen to, which I get. But like for me, as long as it's coming through a lens of humor, I definitely can digest it more. And I think that's kind of what we're trying to do here too, is like channel that same energy. And so he's an inspo to me.
We're not claiming to be comedians.
I'm not a comedian.
No, we're not at all. But I think that format of just showing the nuance and being a little bit more hysterical and not taking it too seriously is more relatable and lighthearted. So it's easier to process more difficult things. Maybe it's a coping mechanism, but I don't know. It's my preference too.
Laughing is always, I think, so healing.
Same.
Yeah.
I agree. I think that was one of my favorite live shows of the past couple of years too. I also saw Jordan Peterson live on his recent book tour. And I would still say that 12 Rules for Life is my favorite book of his.
Yeah.
I think he's venturing into new territory where it's not as instruction based. It's more his observations and analysis of them. And so that's what his talk was on. But yeah, I still to this day, after years of following him too, just like Tim D, like 5+ years, I find it so cool how every time I hear him speak, he's able to make me realize new things that I haven't before. And yeah, I think that he's been a little bit more under wraps and a little bit more laying low. I just don't want people to forget that he's out there. And yeah, every time you hear him or tune into him, he's a really interesting person.
Yeah, I saw Tucker Carlson too, and I met him. Like, there's like a meet and greet before, and he's coming back with Russell Brand, so I want to go
with Russell.
I sent you the tickets. We need to get the tickets.
Okay,
it's like
it's in our text stream.
Yeah, we'll find it. But I feel like him on the Theo Vaughn podcast was amazing. Yep. On Joe Rogan, like there's so much of his personality that has, like, I had no idea he like went through a coke phase. I had no idea he didn't graduate college. Like I had no idea that he was like really into the Grateful Dead. I had no idea that his mother like abandoned him and he was raised by a single dad and like as a single mom. Like I love his like forgiveness of his mother and just like how he came out like so, I think, awesome from a single family, because I feel like a lot of people in the conservative world are like, you're doomed if you come from a single parent house. Like I feel like there's a lot of that like talk. So it's just, I don't know, it's just he's a very like real authentic person, and I think Fox News has really like freed him from that. And his talk was a lot about like the spiritual war that's going on and just like the awakening he's had and realizing like all the conservative stuff he believed in that was like super partisan, how a lot of it he realized is not that. And like, it's really not right versus left, but it's truth versus lies.
I think he's made really great decisions in his career too. And especially this most recent one of him leaving Fox News to pursue his own individual brand. And hold strong to things that maybe Fox wasn't supporting him on. I respect that so much because, yeah, it's easy to kind of ride the coattails of a big network that obviously has a big base or whatever. But yeah, him and his success, seeing his success on his own individual show now is proof to how big of his fan base. Like, he has a massive base.
Yeah.
So yeah, I will support him for a long time. I think he's awesome. And I didn't know that either about the single mom, you said? Or single dad?
Single dad.
Wow.
His mom left him, which is even crazier, I think, than your dad leaving
he's
him.
got grit. I mean,
I can't imagine that happening.
Yeah.
Like someone who literally like gave birth to you. I know it happens, but
leaving you.
Like leaving you. Crazy. Anyways.
I know, I can't imagine that either.
But he's awesome. So it's all.
I haven't seen Tucker live yet, so we need to we need to go to that.
Yeah, we'll report back.
If anyone wants to join us, come to Phoenix for those dates.
That's a big invite. Okay.
Maybe not with us, but I don't know. Tune into that show. Maybe it'll be streamed somewhere. We'll see.
Okay. Well, have a good rest of your night, guys, or day, depending on when this gets posted. So.
Yes. Thank you guys for listening. Yeah, tune in next time. We will be back, and cheers.
Cheers.